I'm Emily Mashak, and you're listening to Tuned Into NoCo, Town Square Media show that lets you know what matters in NoCo. And I'm here today talking with Shelly, Radic, and Liz Brodzinski about Project 127. So thank you so much for joining me, ladies.
Thanks, Emily.
And now, for those who may be unfamiliar with Project 127, what is it in a nutshell, and how did you each find your way there?
Project 127 is all about great families for kids in foster care and then supporting those families and kids. So we work to recruit great foster and adoptive families for kids who need to be adopted, train those families well, and then support them, provide layers of support around them so they can be successful. And I got involved after I moved to Colorado. I'd been working in another nonprofit, and this opportunity came up for me, and I was excited because I had been a foster mom and adopted 2 of my 4 kids through foster care. I would say I have 2 Plan B kids, biology, and 2 Plan A kids, which was adopting kids who couldn't be reunified with their parents.
So I found Project 127 through a friend who had actually just been through the foster care process before us and had fostered a wonderful boy that ended up being adopted into their family. And my husband and I knew foster care was in our path, but didn't quite know when we would do it. And we ended up going to a Project 127 info night and just knew this is the way we needed to go right now. And our family walked down that path and had 2 kiddos come stay with us. And we ended up adopting those 2 kiddos into our forever family.
Wow. Well, I cannot wait to hear more about those experiences. But I do want to ask, the name Project 127 comes from a Bible verse. Is that correct? Would you be able to tell me a little bit more about why that's so important and what that means?
Project 127 comes from the verse James 1:27. And it's the verse that talks about caring for orphans and widows. And that's really where we launch off of for Project 127, caring for orphans and widows where they need it.
I think some people get confused because the kids in foster care usually aren't orphans. They have moms and dads. But in the Bible, the definition of an orphan is a child that needs the protection and provision of a family. And that could be for a short period of time, and that could be for a lifetime. And, we hope for our kids in foster care it's a short period of time and we can support their family and providing a safe environment. But we also know some of them may need a family for a lifetime, and we also prepare families for that as well.
Right. And what is the fostering and adoption rate looking like here in Northern Colorado right now? Do we have a lack of it? I'm guessing we probably don't have an abundance of it, but what's the situation like
We're
that?
both laughing because I don't think anyone would ever tell you there's been an abundance of families for kids in foster care. And I know you checked in, Liz, with one of our friends in Weld County, and again, there's need for foster families, specifically for kids 8 and up, for teenagers, and then kids with special needs and sibling sets of 3 or more. And I think sometimes there's this gap with our teens. 8 and up, I was talking to a group of people one time, and I said, older kids in foster care. And I said, anyone want to guess what an older kid was? And there was this group of kids in the front, and they're like 8, 9, and the adults are like, no, 12, 13. I'm like, the kids are right. In foster care, older is 8. And there's just these great kids that people don't realize that are there. Kids with just incredible gifts, kids that really want to belong, and kids that have had some tough breaks because their families haven't been safe for them, at least for a period of time. So real need is to think about those kids 8 and up, those big kids.
Right. And I'm guessing that kind of ties along into your vision. This was going to be my next question, but you say there's a family waiting for every child. And I know you are talking about every child, but I bet you're kind of thinking those older children or people who may not be recognized as much.
I would say it's important to have a family for all children, for the littles all the way up to the bigs. And we have families that foster kids of all ages. But you're right, Emily, the biggest need are for those big kids 8 and up.
Now, you mentioned, Liz, that you found out about Project 127 through an info night. I'm guessing that's kind of how this process all starts. Would you be able to walk me through that a little bit for our potential listeners who might be interested in something like this?
Absolutely. So families can get involved through an informational meeting night where we just talk about what it means to be a foster parent, what it means to be a foster family, how you can get involved with your church, other ways that maybe aren't, if you're not ready to become a foster family, how you can support a foster family in your community, or even support a family that isn't foster care yet, but they're really struggling and maybe they are a family that needs some support. So our informational meeting night kind of covers all those things in the process of Project 127. The training that it takes to become a foster family, that's the first step.
Yeah, so if someone sees that info night, they're like, I want to do this, then you launch it into training. That's kind of how it goes.
I think people, that is a first place to go. Go on our website. You can find out the dates. You can also find out other information. And we have people that come to Info Night 2 or 3 times just because they're not ready. They want to try something else first. Maybe they're going to fill a backpack or maybe provide meals to a family or something. But it's really important, I think, to go to an Info Night and kind of get the big picture of what's going on in foster care, to learn your place. Because I do believe there's a place for everyone. Everyone can get involved in serving the kids in our community.
Now, I'm sure you both have experience with this, obviously, but what do you think are some of the biggest challenges that comes with being a foster parent, or possibly later on an adoptive parent?
One of the greatest challenges in foster care is that the primary goal is reunification. So to love and care for kids in your home while still supporting a reunification with the biological family is a challenge. And it's a wonderful challenge. It's one that we love to support. And it's the reason why foster families really need support wrapped around them. So when you're in that process of helping kids reunify, reconnect with their parents, helping parents get the skills they need to become better parents, it's really draining as a foster family to continue to do that. So that's one of the greatest challenges.
I agree with Liz. I think that there's this unknown in it. You're stepping into something that doesn't have a clear path forward. You don't know how long it's going to take or when it's going to happen. The system works hard to bring families back together, which is good. I mean, I think we'd all agree. We want kids to be with their parents. And so doing everything we can to make that happen in a safe way is important. I think the other hard thing, though, is along the way, the kids experience a lot of trauma. I mean, they have had to leave their family because it was unsafe for some reason, so there's trauma there. Then they're separated from the adults they've trusted, so that's just a huge loss for a kid. Kids tend to blame themselves, and often because there's not enough great families for kids, there's not enough families, period, for kids in foster care. They get moved around trying to find a good place, so that's another trauma and another trauma. You know, they lose their friends. They have to go to a new school. And so as a foster parent, helping kids navigate that in a way that's healing takes some specialized parenting techniques. You're always trying to build trust and build connection with kids that trust has been broken. And so one of the beautiful things about that whole thing is you get to be part of that healing process. You know, you get to watch a kid. We just had a dad that we interviewed for Father's Day, and I was asking him, you know, what it looked like. And he said, well, when the kids who were little, like these kids were 1 and 2, came into our home, they didn't really like to be touched. Imagine a 1 and 2-year-old that don't like to be touched. And he said it just like thrilled my heart when they both would get up in the morning and start going, uppy, uppy. They wanted to be picked up. And another story he told was that he had him in a cart at Costco. And the little guy, the 2-year-old, noticed Daddy had an owie. Foster Daddy had an owie. And he says, me kiss owie. Oh. You know, and just that excitement and kind of that, it's heartbreaking, but it's heartwarming to know that, wow, I was there for a kid and they could learn that I was a trustworthy adult.
Right. Yeah. Well, it sounds like there are so many beautiful things that come out of this despite the challenges. And I'm sure we'll have listeners out there who are saying, I want to do this, but I bet they might feel scared, feel like they're not ready. What would you say to people like that who just aren't sure if they can take that jump yet?
I'll start and then I'll let Liz get into some specifics. So So I was a foster parent and an adoptive parent before Project 127 ever started. And when I was invited to be part of the staff about 8 years ago, one of the things I loved was all these layers of support that Project 127 puts around the family, because I learned partway into the journey when we moved and we lost our support system that isolation is the enemy of success for any family. And when families step into foster care and things are hard, we just tend to hunker down, and we don't want to tell anyone it's hard. For whatever reason, we're embarrassed, humiliated, think we can get it right. And that is just the worst thing we can do. So I loved that Project 127 just worked so hard to build in, I'd say about 7 layers of support. And Liz, why don't you share what some of those are, because you've experienced them more recently than I have.
Some of the best ways that families can receive support are just lending a listening ear, walking down the block, checking in on your family, inviting them over for popsicles or bringing a meal when they need it. One of the most impactful ways that our family received support when we were just having the hardest time, our pastor happened to walk in to help my husband move a piano, actually, and just noticed it was just a really hard week. And wouldn't you believe the next day they showed up and had a meal for us and just sat and just were with us. It didn't fix the problem, but man, it just let us know how supported we are. Families can feel supported by giving donations.
Well, it's always good to give. I think you feel good about that. But I think you feel good when you receive something from the community, whether it's a backpack or a gift card to go out to dinner or if you got littles diapers, or maybe it's a gift card to somewhere like Old Navy or something for clothes for the bigger kids. You feel like there's support in your community for you.
Right. So even though the challenge of being a foster parent or adoptive parent might seem daunting, you really, especially through Project 127, have that support system there for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now I see that you also work with churches as well to become more adoption-friendly environments. Would you be able to tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah, one of the ways that we support families is by working through churches, and we're really excited to have some local staff in NoCo now to get more churches involved. So maybe it's recruiting, asking families, hey, there's kids in our community that could use the love and care of a great family like yours. But churches need to go farther than that. They also need to say, and we're going to work to make sure our church is trauma-informed. So when you bring the kids, they can feel comfortable in children's ministry. Or we're going to have a foster closet where it's filled with diapers and hygiene supplies. So when a kid comes to your house, you can pick up or someone can drop off things. It might be you do a picnic. We have a local church that's going to do a picnic. We have some churches in other parts of Colorado that have done these drive-through dinners where the church makes freezer meals, and it's foster moms in the cars. They drive through, they pick up three freezer meals. And we had one mom the last time who Monday, so she picks up these 3 meals on Saturday. Monday, she sends us an email. Actually, I think it was Tuesday. She goes, you probably think they were just dinners, but for me, it meant last night I wasn't the one that had the complete meltdown. After a day of therapy and working through some trauma-related behaviors, I was exhausted, and I remembered that I had these freezer meals, and all I had to do was stick it in the oven and dinner would be ready. It's those kinds of things that church communities can get involved with. So recruiting families for kids, yes, but then providing the supports so that those families can do a great job with the kids.
Right. And going off of that, I bet we have lots of different listeners out there, some who maybe want to get involved more in that way and helping out by volunteering or donating, and others who might be interested in actually becoming a foster or adoptive family. Where can they learn more about Project 127? Where do they need to go?
You can definitely start going to our website at www.project127.org to learn more about how you can get involved. You can start by just reaching out to a family that needs some love and sending them some love, or reaching out to your church and seeing how you guys are already supporting your foster care community, or other ways that we can help you guys grow that. If you have another idea of how to support foster care in your community, you can email us at info@project127.org.
I would just add one that I'm excited about. We have this new, I'll call it a marketing campaign, because even though we're nonprofit and churches, we still want to get the word out, but it's called Make Room for One. Make Room for One kid. And so if you go on our website, as Liz had said, project127.org, there's a tab right at the beginning. Click on that. You could share about the needs of kids in foster care on your social media. Just download a meme, put it out on your page with a little bit of information that's there for you. And you could really make room for one of those kids in foster care just by doing that.
That is so awesome. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I've had a great time learning about Project 127, and I know our listeners will too. We covered a lot, though. Is there anything that you feel like we missed or anything else you would like our listeners to know?
Do you know what? I always like to end with this. There is a girl named Jewel, and this is what she asked me to tell people. Kids in foster care need you.
Thank you so much, ladies, again. I really appreciate it. Again, that was Shelly Radic and Liz Brodzinski talking about Project 127. Learn more about the organization by visiting project127.org.